Don't adjust that dial. I am not Jason Floyd. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Pete the Heat Rogers. Pete, what's up? First live before lock show with you. This is fun. Well, second technically, but we had Jason for the first one.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for joining us, guys. I'm super excited about this card. Excited to finally do another show with you. And I know we got some big fights to cover, and I'm interested to see your take on some of these fights.
I'm excited to talk about it. It's a great card if you just want to watch fights. A lot of fun young up and comers on the undercard. 2 title fights. Maybe Mike Perry gets his comeuppance. We shall see. We'll touch on that in a little bit. But before we do anything, you guys know where I'm going with this. We have, I don't know, north of 100 people in here already, and that number will tick up quite a bit. Hit the thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when this show and all of our other shows go live. We don't have anything coming up after this. Normally, I have to let you know that there's like 20 more shows, but we'll be live for 4 hours tomorrow in the morning for the NFL, so don't miss that. Myself and Adam Scher will be live at 9 a.m. for the NFL Strategy Show, and that stream will run all the way up until NFL Lock, so tune in tomorrow, but this isn't a show for NFL. This is MMA, and we have to start with Mike Perry. Mike Perry starts tweeting yesterday afternoon, or Friday morning, that his weight cut is not really going as well as he would like it to go. And then come to find out, he shows up 5.5 pounds overweight. What were your first thoughts when you saw the news coming in? What are your thoughts now? What do we do with Mike Perry on this card now?
My initial thoughts were typical Mike Perry fashion. Just, he's always keeping things interesting. He's always finding a way to keep people talking about him. And I think that he is like the ultimate troll. So I was trying to decipher whether he was trolling us all or if it was real. And then when he stepped on the scale, I'm like, okay, I wonder how the weight cut went. If he had a bad weight cut or if this is strategic. And he just didn't want to cut that final 5 or 7 pounds because, I mean, there is a moment when you're cutting weight and it feels like it's you're not getting anywhere with it, Josh. And you just feel.
I don't ever want to know about it. I don't ever want to cut any weight other than like, oh, I don't weigh enough. I need to actually go to the gym. I don't want to cut weight. It sounds awful. It sounds hard. I'm not about that life.
Yeah, especially when you feel sucked out. But I don't know if he got to that point. And you and I were talking about it, pre-show. And I feel like if he cut off the weight cut at the perfect time, where he's like, all right, this isn't happening. My energy is going to be depleted. And I may hinder my performance. Let's just call it now. I'll take the 30% fine and let's get the fight going. I think that's a smart move. And I think that his decision of doing that has really, it has influenced the ownership a lot. And I think it will influence the ownership where people were probably high on Mike Perry. And now because, you see him come in 5 pounds overweight and wondering if he had a bad camp or anything regarding that, maybe Means comes in a little bit, overweight, you know what I mean? A little overvalued. So it's tough. This is a fight that I'm hammering regardless. I have a little bit of each, but I'm interested to see your take on it as well.
It's interesting. I assume that he pulled out of his weight cut before he really had to put the pedal to the metal for it. He saw what the work was going to take, and that was probably not going to leave him in a place that he wanted to be coming out of it. And his only shot to, 1, keep the fight, and 2, to be able to show up in the cage with anything at all, I think it had to end when it did. So I assume, at least for a round, he's going to look good, or as good as Mike Perry can look. It's not like either one of these guys are no-brainers to me, and it's 8,200 and 8,000 on DraftKings, so it's even more difficult to try to hash it out. I'm going to take the line movement at face value and assume that things are, at least in some way, slightly worse for Perry. If we see it move towards him again, towards lock, that would be interesting to me. But, he was minus 140, minus 145, minus 150, somewhere in that neighborhood all the way up until Friday morning or, probably Thursday night. And now this fight is essentially a coin flip. Tim Means slight favorite at some books, Perry a slight favorite at some books. I'm going to assume it's worse slightly, but I still have no issue getting to a little bit of him. I don't think that he is fully off the table. Based on our ownership projections right now, we have Perry at 25, We have Tim Means at 21. I think both of those guys are about where they should be. So, like just about every other card, that 8K 8,200 fight is incredibly difficult to try to drill into.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I cannot believe that he beat Paul Felder.
I know. And I was just going to say, like, there are some matchups. I mean, Paul Felder should be in the 155-pound division. And, Mike Perry's a big, big guy.
Yeah.
So, that matchup really, blows my mind. Tim Means is a very long, rangy southpaw. And people in general tend to have a problem fighting southpaws because, when you're training for a southpaw, you have to do everything opposite. Okay. You don't want to be moving to your right side and moving into their power hand. You need to be cutting off their lead foot. So Mike Perry also doesn't really have a camp. I mean, he's been kind of bouncing around from coach to coach. I know that he has a couple buddies and looks like he's been training at like an ATT affiliate, not the one in Coconut Creek. So I want to take that with a grain of salt. I don't really know how serious he's taking his career at this point. I really don't even know if Mike knows how serious he's taking his career.
Yeah.
So, with all that being said, if I have 8K, I don't mind taking Tim Means at all. I mean, I did take Perry in a few GPP lineups because I think that he has a more finish potential, whereas Means has a volume towards a decision potential.
So, oh God. Oh, Perry. Well, the good news is I know that he's going to be losing 30% of his purse for missing weight. He doesn't have as many cornermen to pay, so that's probably a good sign. He doesn't lose as much money coming back out. It's still just his girlfriend, right? They are not married, correct?
Yeah, it's his pregnant girlfriend, and I believe a buddy of his who has minimal MMA training or minimal MMA experience. And he's talked about how he just wants to take people that want an experience of being in the corner to be a part of his corner, which, the guy's an idiot. It's just, it's the truth.
Unfortunately for us, it's not Darren Till. That would have been just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a fight on this card that you're looking forward to more than anything else?
From a viewer standpoint, I really want to see the Moreno-Royval fight. I'm extremely excited about that. I've always said how I like the lighter weight classes. I've been a WEC guy for a while. I think that matchup is extremely intriguing. Brandon Moreno has a ton of experience coming from, the Ultimate Fighter, fighting Alexandre Pantoja twice, and has really rounded out his game in the UFC. Pulls the experience edge. Royval's upside is huge in the UFC. His jiu-jitsu is legit. And when I say, like, there are a few fighters that wow me, the kid's jiu-jitsu wows me. Like, he transitions from arm bars to triangles to omoplatas. The kid throws up everything, and he hunts it. He had a great guillotine finish over Kai Kara France, and his striking doesn't look bad at all. I just wonder if their skill sets cancel each other out from a DFS aspect, whereas Moreno's no slouch. And to submit Moreno or finish Moreno would be a tremendous feather in his cap. I think it's going to be tough sledding to do so. But as a punt play under 8K, I think you could do worse than Royval at 7,600.
Speaking of incredible ground game, what did you think of that sub from McKee during the Bellator show?
Yes, that was amazing because I saw him fishing for that. And, you can use a sweep off of that where you get a tight underhook and then you basically get a butterfly in reverse position. So I thought that's what he was going for. And then I see him working like a Darce grip, rear naked choke grip on that arm to really put in that crank. And I'm like, I don't see Caldwell really tapping to that. And what do I know? Caldwell was in extreme pain and tapped, and McKee's legit. McKee is legit. If he gets through Patricio, then my goodness.
Yeah, I feel weird bringing it up, but they're running a really interesting tournament, and that final is, one of the better fights that you can make in MMA at this point, regardless of whether it's UFC, Bellator. That is a high level card. It'd be great if they could do some sort of like DraftKings contest for whenever that event actually runs, because that's a big one.
I know Jason and I have been talking about, reaching out to Bellator and seeing if they would, trying to get involved with whether it's a FanDuel or a DraftKings or something. But I wonder if there's some exclusivity contract amongst, UFC and DraftKings. If they ever were to do that, Jason knows Bellator like the back of his hand. It would be great. I would be really looking forward to that.
Fingers crossed for that. 285 concurrent viewers, 87 likes. You guys know you're going to get that number north of 100. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be fun. Was there any other major news that you saw for this card that we wanted to touch on? I think Perry was just kind of it. I didn't really see anything in the prep or over the past week that popped up to me that was super concerning. There hasn't been a ton of line movement that I've seen other than Perry. Alan Joban has moved quite a bit, but that's been over like the past 2 weeks or so. It hasn't been anything too crazy, but the Means and Mike Perry line is the biggest one. Any news that we're missing right now that we want to fill everybody in with?
I mean, I would say that, my take from the weigh-ins and just noticing some things. I thought Shogun Hua came in a little soft. I thought that he didn't really look like he had a great camp. I was trying to stalk their Instagram of King's MMA to see if he was really around King's MMA this camp or getting in a good camp. I couldn't really find much on his training, to be honest. And if I was looking at, his body on the scale, I felt like he looked better other fights. Take that with a grain of salt, of course, because it is Shogun Hua, and his experience can definitely get him through plenty of fights. But maybe it makes Paul Craig a little bit more interesting, to me. I think that fight's a little underwhelming, but I did roster Craig maybe in a few more than I would have prior.
Mauricio Shogun Hua is 5-1-1 since 2015.
Blows my mind.
How many people in the light heavyweight division have a record that's better than that since 2015? That is insanity.
With a win over Corey Anderson, which is insane.
It's mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. You want to beat Lil Nog and Jean Vellante and Tyson Pedro, I get it. That Corey Anderson win, albeit a split decision, albeit 2016, but still, he shouldn't be winning that fight. There's so many miles on this dude. The fact that he's still around is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that win aged well. Yeah. And it's funny how MMA works like that. You get an early win, and then 5 years from now, you're talking about, like, you see the guy who knocked out Israel Adesanya back in kickboxing is now getting some notoriety because he's starting to perform well. And it's like, when you had Conor McGregor and his opponent, Joe Duffy, came into the UFC, everybody was talking about that eventual pairing as a rematch. It's a nice narrative, but man, I can't get behind Shogun Hua. I think 7,700 is appropriate, and I can't fault people if they think that he's a good play. It's just, man, if anybody's going to get better from their previous outing, I would imagine it's Paul Craig. I think that he still has room for improvement, whereas Shogun's pretty stagnant.
Did you see that Alex Pereira knockout?
Yes, it was beautiful, beautiful.
I'm just happy Thomas Powell woke up. I saw the tweet from Ariel Helwani, like, he's been down for 5 minutes and has not moved, and I was like, oh no. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately the tweet was like, okay, he's up and he's on a stool. I was like, whew, that was about to be real bad.
Yep, thank goodness. I mean, that's what happens when you see elite kickboxers really round out their game and develop some takedown defense or a ground game. And I mean, Israel Adesanya comes from an extensive kickboxing background, and the guy looks like untouchable right now because he was able to just develop a game plan to Chuck Liddell sprawl and brawl type of game plan.
All right, I think we've probably got a bit of a full crowd in here now. You guys have flown well north of 100 likes. I appreciate it. Let's get into some of the breakdown for this card. I think we should start in some cash games. We've got 2 5-round fights tonight. There's a lot of talk, generally speaking, about whether you should be stacking the main event in a cash game. Here's a question for you. Are you playing cash tonight? Are you stacking a 5-round fight? Are you stacking both 5-round fights? How are you feeling tonight about the 2 main events?
I'm interested in both of the main events, and we talked about it pre-show, and I think that you can bring it up even better and talk about it further of how you're very, very smart and intelligent when it comes to analytics and how all these salaries. And so I think Jennifer Maia at 6,600, her price is so low that she might be one of the best value plays on the slate, if not the best, as long as she can survive 5 rounds, right? Yeah. And that's going to be a big what if, because Shevchenko, for me, she's my favorite female mixed martial artist of all time. She's one of the most talented fighters out there. It's probably going to be a dominant win, but still that 6,600 really stares me in the face. And I played it in a few lineups, but I'm sure that you have more of it than I do.
I do. I have quite a bit of exposure to Jennifer Maia today. She is not in my cash lineup. I do have Alex Perez along with Davis Figueiredo. I didn't want to double stack the cash game. It felt weird to me because I expect the two champs to win. And if that's the case, then I'm probably going to have to get my other two picks right. And while you can get yourself to two relatively high favorites in that situation, it does bring me a little bit of pause. So I have Perez. I don't have Maia. We'll see if that holds up for the next hour and 13 minutes or whatever it is until we get to lock. I never expected Jennifer Maia to look like a play that I would be trying to get to today. If anybody saw, I put out contenders videos for this UFC card. We're going to be doing these sorts of videos every week now. And the first thing that I did was go to our MMA Pro Plays tool. So Alex, Jason, myself, Pete, Steve Buzzard, so DeCults, and Mark, we all give our rankings of from top to bottom, 1 through, in this case, I think 24. We rank every single fighter from the top to the bottom. So when I ran my sim results, I saw Jennifer Maia, and she was coming up 4th out of all the fighters on the card in terms of frequency of being in the optimal lineup. And oh boy, that did not seem right. So the first thing I did was go to our Pro Plays tool and think like, okay, well, I need to know where Alex is. I need to know where Steve is because I know that they're going at this from a data perspective. So I want to know if my data is just wrong. And I pulled it up and I looked at Alex, and he had Jennifer Maia 4th, and then Steve had her 5th. I was like, okay, I guess I'm in the ballpark. Jennifer Maia is very live to be in an optimal lineup, and that is different than being confident in her winning. I would be shocked if she wins this fight. I think Valentina Shevchenko is one of the best fighters on the planet, regardless of gender. She destroys everyone, and the only time she loses, it's a close decision against Amanda Nunes. That's something that you should not be ashamed of. She's incredible. With that said, we rarely see a fighter at 6,600, and that amount of savings is really relevant because when the card is over, the optimal lineup doesn't care where the names come from. They don't care about any of that. All we're talking about is fantasy points and a salary, and you're trying to make everything fit together. If Jennifer Maia can survive 5 rounds in this fight, there's a very realistic chance that because of her salary structure, she can be in an optimal lineup because she allows you to grab all of the other 5 best scores. And that's where it gets kind of scary. She's projected in our ownership for 8% ownership on our last run. I think that's wildly too low. It's going to fail more often than it succeeds, for sure. She shows up in the optimal in like the 30 to 40% range in my data. But 8% is way too low. If you're trying to win a GPP, you are better off having Jennifer Maia, in my opinion, than any other fighter on the card. It's just not frequent. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I love your breakdown. And, that's where, we're so different is because, like, you bring that approach where, like, obviously me as a fighter, I'm looking at, like, it on paper. I'm also looking at fight film. But the analytics don't lie, and stats don't lie sometimes. So it's not too often we see a fighter this low. I mean, when we see a fighter at 6,900, 6,800, we have to start really looking at it and start seeing, maybe even in a loss, can they pay off and allow us that flexibility to pay up? 6,600 is unheard of. I'm not even sure if we've ever seen that before. I mean, like, it's so low that it's intriguing. So I did play Maia in a few just to see how it would work. I mean, obviously, if the top dogs that I'm stacking with her don't come through, the lineup's not going to work. Of course, you still have to pick the right, the victors. But I like the chances of that in a few contrarian lineups, and I love what you're saying there. Perez as a cheap, punt play at 7,200. That fight is a very close fight. It really is. I mean, if you go back and you look at Perez's career, he's had some submission losses. He also has that loss to Joseph Benavidez. Could have been as a result of a headbutt, could have been, just as a result of some nice ground and pound, potentially hitting the back of the head. Figueiredo in the division hits like a Mack truck and can finish anybody. So the only pause I have with Figueiredo is his volume. But you're not always going to find a fighter who has volume and power. It's kind of they usually don't go hand in hand. If you're a power puncher, you usually have low volume setting up that perfect shot. Figueiredo has great jiu-jitsu to rely on as well. It all comes down to the rest of your lineup. I have a few Perez lineups at 7,200. I like them. I do like them, but I do have a lean to Figueiredo. I think Figueiredo could hold on to this belt for quite some time, and I think that Perez could be rushed to the top just slightly too soon, Josh.
It's a shame. I really want to see Figueiredo fight Demetrius Johnson, and I don't know. Maybe there'll be another trade like in 2 years or something like that, and we can get that done.
What a bad trade!
Oh man,
what a bad trade!
It felt good at the time.
Yeah,
it felt good at the time, and then Masvidal made that go away, I guess.
Yeah.
He need the good trade straight out of Ben Askren's face. I think we need to talk a little bit more about Jennifer Maia, and I'm going to throw this to you because I'm going to be useless in this discussion. What can she do to win this fight?
Well, I think that she has a very, a steep hill to climb in fighting this, I would say future legend in Shevchenko. Like, I really view her that highly. She needs to, not get intimidated by Shevchenko, which it's really hard to determine. It's almost like if you were able to live bet, I think that, live betting MMA is one of the most advantageous things you can do. And I think that you can really make, a profit off of doing that. I wish I was able to. But Maia needs to really get behind her boxing, press Shevchenko, work towards a takedown. Shevchenko has some great wrestling as well. But, Maia has some really slick jiu-jitsu. The problem with that is if she's on the bottom, she's going to be on the receiving end to a ton of ground and pound. And Shevchenko's in that elite category of ground and pound. I think that the best thing for her is to try to not get, too overzealous. I can't really see her finishing Shevchenko, but potentially, press her against the cage and try to chip away at some rounds and maybe make rounds a little bit closer early on in the round. Get in front and try to dictate the pace of Shevchenko. The final 30 seconds really influence judges as well. So try to have real, some late flurries every round to potentially move that needle. I really don't see it happening too often. I see it like a, 5 out of 100 times that she wins this fight. I just think Shevchenko's that good.
And for the people that are asking in chat, this is a very different scenario, in my opinion, on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings. The way that the salaries are structured on FanDuel does not open up Jennifer Maia to be the same sort of value play that she is on DK. If we look at just the averages in our MMA pro plays, on DraftKings, her average score brings her in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, brings her in 8th overall. On FanDuel, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14th on FanDuel. So when we're bringing her up, or when I'm bringing her up, because chat doesn't seem very happy that I'm talking about the most gigantic underdog on the card. This is more of a DraftKings thing than a FanDuel. But guys, you got to remember, this is about winning a GPP. That's what I'm talking about here. It's not about whether or not I think she's going to win, because I don't. I expect Valentina Shevchenko to beat the tar out of her. The reason that the line looks like it does is because she's an incredible underdog. The reason that Shevchenko is minus 105 to beat her by TKO or KO is because she should probably beat the stuffing out of her on a regular basis. That's 50-50 to TKO her. I'm not saying it happens a lot, but when you're right, pays off in spades. And these top heavy tournaments, that's why you're trying to make a play like this. If they were a little bit flatter of a structure, she wouldn't be as interesting.
Yeah. So what would Maia's salary have to be on FanDuel for her to really, make sense to you? Like a 6, a 5? Would that difference in price really start to make her a little bit more appealing? Or is there a strategic reason as to why Maia doesn't really open up the salary for you on FanDuel?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, let's think about it like this. So let's think about Shevchenko for a second. So she's 9,600, correct? On DraftKings?
Yep.
That right there would be 19% of your cap. On FanDuel, she's 23%. So it's a little bit more tough for Shevchenko. If we go to the Maia side of it, where she's 6,600, that is 13% of your salary cap. On FanDuel, she's 8%. So that seems like it's better, but you don't have as many opportunities to make that salary up because of the way that the salary structure works on FanDuel. So when someone is that wildly low, you're kind of just there on purpose. You lose a little bit of the opportunity cost for being able to roster some other people. You just can't fit that many other incredible fights into your lineup in that regard. So when I ran my Sims, Jennifer Maia only shows up in the optimal lineup on FanDuel 6% of the time. When I ran it on DraftKings, it's like 35. It's a completely different scenario. The MVP position changes it up a little bit on FanDuel as well. That mechanism changes things because you're looking for that sort of massive score in that top spot. So if you're on FanDuel, don't worry about her too much. On DraftKings, I guess you'll see myself and Alex Baker and DeColtz either at the top or at the bottom.
Yeah, I love it, man. You know, it definitely opened my eyes a little bit, and it's kind of just when somebody's just too cheap. You know, Maia doesn't really have a realistic shot at winning, in my opinion, but she's too cheap and hard to ignore in a few lineups, especially if you're playing multi lineups. I mean, outside of that, I mean, would you rather take a gamble on a 6,600 Maia or a 6,900 Pulatnikov, who is, you know, fighting a debuting fighter in Louis Kosi, who hasn't been out of the first round, hasn't really been tested by any extreme opposition. It's a good argument towards Maia because it's the 5 rounds and it's elevated. But I'm excited to see the matchup. I'm excited to see the fight.
Are there any other fights that you have your eye on from a cash game perspective? Guys that you're just looking at and you're thinking like, I feel great about this. This is a cash game staple.
Yeah. So for me, he might be my favorite play on the card. And I know that Jason Floyd kind of disagrees with me. And I think that he's taking the GPP shot on Jordan Wright. But for me, it's Joaquin Buckley. Like, I really like Joaquin Buckley at 8,900. I think that he has tremendous KO upside. I've seen plenty of fight film. I've also fought on the same card as Joaquin Buckley, so I know what he brings to the table. He's fought a great list of opponents, whereas Jordan Wright's really been hand-fed opponents. And you do see that boxing approach in some fighters' careers, but it tends to be either trying to get a pretty record or running into the problem where nobody wants to fight you. I think it's kind of just like being hand-fed opponents and getting that pretty record and kind of padding your record. And I do think that we have seen Jordan Wright, you know, outside of the last fight against Ike Villanueva, it was an impressive showing. I mean, he took out a big guy, took out a guy who outweighed him and, hit him with a very nice spin and hook kick and then some great Muay Thai. He's trained under Anthony Hardonk and also Jackson Wink. So, I mean, he has great cornermen. But as far as skills-wise, and there's one thing that you can't teach, it's how to take a shot. And some people really panic when you are trying to knock them out. And I would have to say that Jordan Wright is one of those guys. He falls into that category of not liking getting hit. And I know that sounds like, well, who likes to get hit? But certain fighters really don't handle that pressure well at all. And I think Joaquin Buckley's a safe play for me. I think he's one of the safest plays on the card, in my opinion. I think he goes out there, puts the pressure. Look what he was doing to Kevin Holland. Like, that was a back and forth affair. He throws together some great combinations. Jason's not really convinced in Joaquin Buckley, but I really like Joaquin Buckley.
Well, it's good that Jason is not here because this is the show where you get the Joaquin Buckley love. Buckley is my current most exposed fighter on DraftKings. That is the direction I'm going. I don't have him in my cash lineup, however, but I do have him heavily in everything that I'm doing from a GPP perspective. I love that he's 8,900. That's a really nice price. No matter what sort of lineup construction you're trying to put together on DraftKings, he's pretty easy to get to in that range. Do you have the same sort of feel for him on FanDuel? On FanDuel, Buckley $19, Jordan Wright is $10. Just for reference sake, Figueiredo $21, Valentina Shevchenko $23. Does Buckley still look good to you at $19?
I mean, he does. I think that the first round KO upside's there. I think one way or another he's putting away Jordan Griffin. Jordan Wright rather. I really think that he's a nice play. I mean, would you rather him or Cynthia Calvillo at $19? For me, it's no question. I want Joaquin Buckley. Okay, maybe you want to go to the $18 instead of $19. Okay, who are you going to play? Paul Craig? Do you feel good about that? Brandon Moreno, $18. For me, like as far as like feeling confident in somebody, I really feel confident with that price tag. I think it's appropriate at 19. I think it's a bargain, actually.
We're on the same page there. I really, really do love Buckley in this spot. So I'm hoping for another highlight reel knockout.
Same.
I would take that for sure. 400. No. Oh, it refreshed itself. 555 concurrent viewers, 151 likes. I haven't begged in, 15 minutes or so. So it seems like the perfect time to push that number north of 200. We've got some free content tonight. If you're trying to play any DFS on this lovely UFC pay-per-view card, our MMA ownership is free today. Go check it out. Awesemo.com. Browse to our MMA section. You'll find the banner at the top. Nightbot might even be tossing that link in. It looks like Nightbot threw that in there like 10 messages ago. So check out what Nightbot has to offer. Click that free MMA link. And then Nightbot is really doing a fantastic job of beating me to the punch. You can sign up using the promo code Mayflower and get the NFL Express Weekly Package for $1. This code will work all the way up until Thanksgiving Day. I would sign up because if you honestly look, people aren't going to want me to say this, but you should sign up 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. Sign up. $1 NFL Express package. You get it for tomorrow's football games. You get it for Thursday's Thanksgiving Day slate. And that'll be 7 days. You'll still have the ability to check everything out through the weekend and play again next Sunday. Well, that's the perfect timing. That's the way to do it. $1 single. All you have to do is use the promo code Mayflower. I'm really happy that Nightbot dropped that in there because I copied the old pumpkin promo into this run sheet, and I almost gave the pumpkin promo. But we're done with pumpkins. We're talking about boats that came over here in a time where you didn't know if you were going to live when you got on that boat. Crazy people. They just hopped on a boat, floated into the ether, and just showed up in a different place. I can't imagine it. I would never do that. I don't like boats now. Can you imagine getting on a boat from England and being like, we end up where we end up?
Yeah, Josh, I'm a baby when it comes to that stuff. Like, I get motion sickness like you wouldn't believe. So, boats are a no-go. My dad's obsessed with boats. Boats are a no-go. I can't even really sit in the passenger seat of a car. I'm always driving. So, I keep the Dramamine on hand. I'm a baby with that. I'd rather, stay on land. I'm cool with fighting. I'm cool with other stuff. Like, boats, not my forte, not my thing. If I'm going to fish at all, I'll fish off a dock or I'll fish on the side. I don't really need to go on a boat.
No, there's too many critters in the ocean. I don't need to be there.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about my thoughts on boats, but you should use the promo code Mayflower when you sign up. Let's touch on a couple GPP plays.
Okay.
Anybody you love in GPPs this week? Anybody that you thought was going a bit under-owned for your personal taste?
Well, there are some weeks where I'm not in love with the 9K options, and I think that this week you have plenty of good 9K options. That's why, maybe pivoting from a Shevchenko, at the top of the list to one of these lower 9K options makes a ton of sense. I think that Louis Kosi has great round one KO potential. How does he really fare outside of round one? That's unknown. We really don't know. I don't know how his cardio is. Only he knows how that is. I think that Rodriguez at 9,100 would be the pick. I think that matchup's interesting. And I think that's a very pivotal fight because I think Rodriguez is going to come in pretty popular, has great volume, has shown a great chin. He was rocked in his last bout, but came back over Dwight Grant, got the KO. Has great submission ability under 10th plane of jiu-jitsu to rely on. You saw him submit Tim Means with a guillotine choke. The kid is super talented in the division, and he's well-rounded. I will pump the brakes a little bit on him, even though I do love him, Josh. Okay. Just because, kind of like what Alex always says, the box score watchers. Dalby got finished in his last fight against Jesse Bronson. So people automatically assume that MMA Matt that Rodriguez is going to do it. I don't know if he gets a finish. I do think Rodriguez is the better fighter and will beat him over the course of 3 rounds. And with an elevated volume, I think he's a great play at 9,100. Just taking out Dalby early. Dalby's fought some really, really tough, opponents and has actually, not been finished from them. So you think of Zach Cummings, Zaleski dos Santos. You know what I mean? Like, those guys are notable names. It was some time ago, but Dalby's been durable in his career. But man, Jesse Bronson on last minute notice did KO him. So I'm intrigued by this matchup.
Darren Till draw.
Yep.
You don't see that every day.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't have a single share of Daniel Rodriguez right now. I'm only playing 20 max in GPP on DraftKings today. The 45% ownership is really concerning to me. And here's the reason why I don't. And it's not that he doesn't look like, I mean, he's 75% to win this fight. He's at 9,100. Joaquin Buckley is $200 cheaper, about the same odds of winning the fight, and 15% less ownership. I'm just getting to more. I'm taking basically every share that could have gone to Daniel Rodriguez and hoping that Buckley beats Rodriguez in a head-to-head. If Buckley scores one more point, I mean, it doesn't even have to be one, but if Buckley scores one more fantasy point than Daniel Rodriguez, then I'm happy to have Buckley. That's my hope. That's the 9K guy that I'm dodging. That does not make me feel good at all.
See, I love your approach with that and how you bring in, the analytics and the math and all this, because, I'm getting accustomed to that. I'm bringing that into my analysis and everything. So I don't think that Dalby's a bad fighter. So if you're playing Rodriguez thinking that Dalby's a bad fighter, I got news for you. Dalby's very good. And the one thing is he's not going to just stand and box with his opponent. What can make this matchup so different and difficult for Rodriguez is the kicks. Like, he has great dexterity in his legs and he can kick. And if he keeps opponents at kicking range, which is a further distance away, then you're talking about a different game where Rodriguez's high volume boxing maybe isn't brought to the table as much as it normally is in a firefight, phone booth type of fight. So, Dalby's interesting of the 7K options as kind of potentially winning like a close decision. But as far as GPPs, I can't really see Dalby getting a finish over Rodriguez. I would be really shocked. He in his career, he only has a 56% finish rate, Josh. That's really not good.
No, it's not helpful at all for me. That's the problem with DFS and why sports betting can be a little bit more fun to root for, because I end up with things that I don't necessarily think are likely. You end up having to bet on low likelihood outcomes because other people are betting on them less. And that's not ever like a comfortable place to be. It's not fun to take something that you think happens 10% of the time, but it is if you think that the public only thinks it happens 5% of the time. And that's what we're talking about. It might not be likely, but when it hits, it becomes very, very important for you. I'm going to let you know who I'm heavy on right now. You tell me if I'm crazy or not. So Buckley is 1. Brandon Royval is 2. He is the cheapie that I'm hitching my wagon to. Again, not fun. I think Brandon Moreno is fantastic. He's certainly the favorite, 63% to win that fight. If I'm betting on anybody in the 7s, right now it is Brandon Royval. Do you have a preference in the 7s that is more important than Brandon Royval?
I will say that I think Brandon Royval's he has the highest upside of the 7K options. I really do. I think that's based on his finishing ability. Great submission. He hunts for the kill. Also striking, I think he's a little underrated. I don't hate that pick at all, and I think that he's going to be a popular 7K option. Like, for me, if I'm looking at the 7K options, I would be very surprised if Perez got a finish over Figueiredo. I'd be extremely surprised. Chukagian's notorious for decisions, comes in 21% finish rate, very, very low. Shogun Hua really, kind of just disappointed me on the scale, 7,700. Despite his accolades outside the UFC, which is crazy, he is 11-9-1 in the UFC, so he's not the Shogun of old. Royval, I love what you're saying there. 92% finish rate out of 12 victories, 2-0 in the UFC. His killer instinct is crazy. I don't think there's a 7K option that really matches it. The only 2 other 7K options that I circled on my notes and I included in some of my lineups, and I want to hear your thoughts on it, would be Gooden against Jobin, because Jobin's been away from the cage for quite some time. He has suffered some KO losses. I don't hate the Jobin side at all. It's just getting behind the fighter who's been in the cage a little bit more recently in Gooden. 17-4 overall, is making his UFC debut and does not do well with getting hit. So how are we touting him at 7,900? Well, it's kind of just on the narrative that maybe Jobin's just not who he used to be. Jobin's going to be 39. That's pretty old in fighting. And the other 7K option that I think could possibly make things interesting is Stoltzfus at 7,400. And the reason I'm saying that is because if you see two fighters and they match up stylistically, if they're pretty similar, similar boxing, similar jujitsu, if they can kind of stifle the other person's offense and they match up well and it cancels things out, it becomes a dogfight. Like, I don't think Dawkins is a bad play at 8,800. I just think it's a closer fight than what the odds are saying. Like, I really do. I mean, Dawkins had a great performance against Brendan Allen and is 0-1 in the UFC. But I do think that Stoltzfus is just as talented as Dawkins. So, I mean, Stoltzfus is in a few of my lineups. What are your thoughts?
I have no shares of Kyle Dawkins. I do have 2 shares of Stoltzfus. So
yep.
He is picking up 0 ownership. That's another spot where it's just one of those situations. When he ultimately is successful, I think that the field is a bit too low, a little lower than they should be. It's not highly likely, but I think it's more likely than the public thinks. And you picked another one. I have more Jared Gooden than Alan Jouban, 25%. In fact, I'm north of the field. I'm a little bit under on Jouban. So you picked the 2 other 7K fighters that I would be on, other than Brandon Royval. I don't have any shares of Shogun. I don't have any shares of anything in the Chookagian Calvillo fight. I mean, obviously, Calvillo 8,700, but I don't have Chookagian. I don't have Calvillo either. I just wanted to put that out there. I don't have Ariana Lipski. So when it comes to 7K fighters, I'm hoping that Stoltzfus can do something. Jared Gooden, I have at 25% right now. And then, honestly, I'm hoping that Alex Perez is a bit more live than it seems at 7,200.
Yeah, I love it. I love your thoughts on it and kind of how I know Jason doesn't really cancel out fighters or cross them off, so to speak. I do, just as from like I watch fight film. Why am I going to toss money on somebody that I don't really have a lot of faith in? If I'm playing a big 150 max or something like that, it's always good to get a little contrarian. Yeah. But so I kind of trust my own intuition on some fights and some fighters. I think that Stoltzfus is a good underdog pick. I think I like him a little bit more than Dalby. Dalby's up against a tough opponent. I'm not really feeling Wright, whereas Jason was. I would much rather play somebody else in that range. Like I would, Gooden and Jouban, I think can determine a lot on the slate, similar to the Perry Means, because you have an aged veteran who has taken a ton of damage over their career. Where are they at now? I mean, are they durable enough to withstand a power shot from their opponent? Gooden's tape, if we're talking about Jouban Gooden's tape is underwhelming. Like, he comes forward, but man, he doesn't like to get hit, and he gets hit quite often because he keeps his head straight on the center line. Everything he does, I don't think he moves at all. I think Josh just moved his head more than Gooden moves his head, and I'm being serious. And Jouban, right? Jouban used to go out there and put people away quickly. And if you bring into, the Muay Thai, the elbows, the knees, and the kicks, makes things interesting. Plus, Jouban's a southpaw. Means is a southpaw. You're talking about guys that I'm okay with rostering despite their volatility.
I just like seeing Alan Jouban succeed because he's a handsome man. I'm comfortable saying it. I'm comfortable saying it. I'm secure with it. He's better than me. How much I can tell you. Rough go for him, though. I mean, look, the Dwight Grant split decision is whatever, but, losing to Nico Price and Gunnar Nelson is not all that bad.
It's not
I
all
love
that
Gunnar
bad.
Nelson. I'm not a huge Nico Price fan, but it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I just went back and I watched that Dwight Grant fight again because I'm like, okay, Dwight Grant's a little similar to Gooden. Very good boxing, good power. I think Dwight Grant's a lot better than Gooden. How did he fare? And he actually did really well early on, too. I mean, he hit Dwight Grant a lot. He hurt him quite a bit. If I'm Jouban, right, and you're a veteran, a 12-fight UFC veteran, you're not going to lose this fight to the new kid on the block. You're going to show him, give him a rough welcoming to the UFC and, kind of go out on top. I know that he's kind of already talked about retirement, so that 1 foot in, 1 foot out is always worrisome. But we'll have to see. I think it's a matchup that I hammered the Jouban Gooden fight and I hammered the Perry Means fight because of how much of a flip of a coin those fights are.
I feel like there are two fights that we haven't said anything about, so I'm going to bring them up now, and then I think we can transition. Cynthia Calvillo, Caitlin Chukagian, Antonina Shevchenko, Ariana Lipski. Are you getting to either side of either one of these two ladies' fights? Because for right now, I don't think that they project very well. We're not really projecting a ton of ownership. Cynthia Calvillo at 21% is the highest number that we have of any of the four fighters that I've just mentioned. At 8,700, I have a really hard time picturing her paying off that price tag. The Shevchenko-Lipski fight, I'm not expecting much. Neither one of them showed up all that frequently in my simulations. In fact, Ariana Lipski showed up 12% likely to be in the optimal lineup. That is the highest number of all four of them. 12%. Everybody else is in like the high teens or the 20s, or, you know, you get like Figueiredo and Valentina Shevchenko into like the 50s and 60s. There's just not a lot here. Does anything stand out to you? Am I missing anything?
No, I think you're kind of right on it. I mean, I did take two of the four fighters. I did have Calvillo in, I think, one, maybe two of my lineups. And I actually did have Antonina Shevchenko in one of the two, just because I like those mid-priced fighters. I think they often go overlooked. People play high and low and kind of forget the mid sometimes. I mean, her stats and what she's done in the UFC just isn't all that. But I really don't know if Lipski's all that good. Lipski will do well if the fight ends up on the mat and she can work towards her jiu-jitsu. But that knee bar was somewhat of the most fluky submissions you'll see. And I think that this is going to be a back and forth type of clinching fight. And clinching fights tend to favor Shevchenko, especially if she can avoid the takedowns of Lipski. And I don't really think that Lipski's too much of a takedown artist. If I had to pick a side, 8,400 is okay in hopes of maybe she finds a finish similar to how she did on the Contender Series. Obviously, when we're talking about women's MMA, the odds of the fights going the distance are usually pretty high. So pump the brakes on that sometimes. With Cynthia Calvillo-Chukagian, if you're talking about the fight going the distance, you do have a grappler. So anytime you have a grappler, that makes things different and makes things interesting. Calvillo's takedowns, when she goes to the takedown well, she's tenacious and she can really make a difference and work towards a submission. And I thought there's something here that's pretty interesting, right? She had a draw against Marina Rodriguez, she's an animal. Like, she really has great Muay Thai. Cynthia Calvillo landed 78 significant strikes, 3 takedowns, 7 advances on the ground. It was a draw, Josh. She scored 75 points in the draw. So I saw that. I'm like, I don't think she can replicate that performance, because advances and reversals are all dependent on the scrambles of an MMA fight. And you're not
also very dependent on the fight metric score and if he or she actually rostered that person that night.
Yeah, right. And maybe on this day that Cynthia Calvillo fought Rodriguez, fight metric had a lot of Cynthia Calvillo. So if she got a victory in that and wasn't a draw, she would have scored over 100 points in a decision, which I think is interesting, because I think she does have an extreme grappling advantage over Chukagian. Chukagian went out there and out-wrestled Antonina Shevchenko. But outside of that matchup, Chukagian has been taken down by almost everybody she's fought. She does not have the best takedown defense. Comes in 48%. Finish percent, 21%. So it makes Calvillo, I don't even know if appealing is the word. I think it just makes her okay. Like if you want to just be contrarian and be a little different, 8,700 for Calvillo decision is okay.
I think this stands out. This has nothing to do with our card. In Calvillo's last 6 fights, 5 of them have a relevant note attached to them on her Wikipedia page. 4 of them, someone missed weight. Twice it was her. Once it was Joanne Calderwood. Once it was Jessica I. And then in the 5th note that is listed, Cynthia Calvillo tested positive for marijuana metabolite. So 5 out of the 6 things were either testing positive for a banned substance or missing weight. That's incredible. Only 3 of her fights don't have additional notes.
She's lucky she's still in the UFC or something. You know what I mean? Like some penalty, a suspension or something.
Yeah, she missed weight in 2018, missed weight again at the end of 2019. Hasn't been great for her. I bet she felt really good when Jessica I missed and she didn't.
Yeah, right.
I want to bring this up because I missed it before. We got a super chat from William Westry at 5:33, and it just totally slipped through the chat. Chat was moving pretty quickly at the time. William wanted to know sneaky captain for FanDuel tonight. I don't know if it's sneaky, but I don't think Buckley's getting enough love in what would be the captain spot. I assume you mean that, so that's going to be for the main card. I don't ever mess with the captain mode on DraftKings. So is that just a main card thing?
I tell you what, Josh, that is difficult. The captain on DraftKings is always extremely difficult. On FanDuel, I do think that you want to target somebody that has either high volume or high finish upside. I think Buckley kind of fits that bill. He has struggled with people who tend to be a little bit more rangy than he is. Yeah. I'm just not sold that Wright's all that good. I've seen Wright crumpled and finished. I thought Buckley was doing pretty well against a long, rangy Kevin Holland until obviously he wasn't and was finished. But I think Kevin Holland's hands were the problem there. I don't think really that Jordan Wright has good hands to keep Buckley away from him.
Yeah, I'm looking at the salaries for the captain mode now. I haven't played any of the captain mode DraftKings contest. I've always been just straight out of it. Shevchenko at 15.6, Figueiredo at 13.8. So they would be the most popular captains, I would expect. You would think that Rodriguez would outpace Buckley from an ownership perspective. I think 13.2 for Buckley is good because Calvillo at 12.6, I can't come up with a scenario where I want to take Calvillo at captain over Buckley. And then you're dropping down to like Moreno at 12. Brandon Moreno at 12,000 is probably not going to get a ton of look from a captain perspective. I would imagine that sort of gets ignored. I would prefer Buckley to Moreno. I don't believe we have any sort of way to like think about the ownership there, but either I'm going to go with either Buckley or Moreno. I think Buckley is my preferred option, but 12K for Moreno, he might slip through the cracks in terms of captain ownership.
Yeah, and I think you're correct on that. I mean, I think that maybe the new shiny toy of Brandon Royval is kind of, taking people off of Moreno and making him one of the best leverage plays on the slate. And we always talk about leverage and ownership, and you want to be on the right side of it. And if you avoid Royval, who maybe goes out there and just isn't ready for this high step up in competition, because let's be real, Moreno could have been fighting for the title right now, over Perez. Like, that is legitimate. Like, he probably should have got the spot over Perez. So maybe he's feeling some type of way and wants to go, put on a performance and a statement. And I know that all these, motivational factors that I talk about, that's what fighters like think about, and what motivates you to, perform at a higher level, especially when a fighter's irritated or, doesn't like their opponent. You definitely want to get and target those matchups. So I don't hate the Moreno as an undervalued play whatsoever.
So we are just about at the top of the hour. We've got 35 minutes until lock, 35 minutes until this card kicks off. I think we're ready to transition into grabbing some questions from the old audience.
Absolutely.
And I guess my final time. This will be my final push for it. We're at 190 likes. Let's just get north of that 200 mark. You won't hear me mention it again. If you haven't hit it yet, hit that thumbs up. We're going to take questions. So YouTube chat, go ahead and get those questions in. Premium Slack, go ahead and get your questions in. This one stood out the most to me. Any concerns with the line movement on Buckley? And I'll be honest with you, I hadn't really been paying attention to it just because he's a relatively big favorite. So it can move a little bit more than you would like it to. But on Wednesday, it's minus 262. He is now like minus 200. That's sizable from a percentage standpoint. I don't think it's anything that I'm looking into too much. I still think that Buckley is a very clear favorite in that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really buying the Wright hype. He did take out a guy who was basically a heavyweight, so that could be coming into consideration of why people are throwing money at Wright. He's an underdog. People want to win more money, so that's why they target correct underdogs or underdogs that have a shot. He does have a size advantage. Okay, comes in 3 inches, actually 4 inches taller than Buckley. But, the reach, it's only an inch advantage over Buckley. So, I mean, it's not really that big of a deal, if somebody's taller than you. And a guy that loops his shot so much like Buckley, lots of overhands, lots of looping hooks, it could work out in Buckley's favor. fighting a taller guy. If Buckley was maybe fighting a guy his similar stature, he might struggle more. And I know that sounds kind of backwards, but that's just how certain styles match up well. And I think that the only worry for Buckley is if he gets a little too close, allows Wright to get that Muay Thai plum, and Wright starts throwing up those knees up the middle. I mean, if anybody needs anybody in the chin on this card, they're most likely going down. It's not too often you're going to walk through a knee.
For other questions that we have coming in, we got tagged in premium Slack. Do you think it's more likely than not that Figueiredo and Valentina Shevchenko are together in the winning lineup?
For me personally, I think it's going to be one of the two. I don't really see it being 2 out of 2. I could be wrong on that. What are your thoughts?
If I'm betting on anything, I am going to go with the assumption that it's one of the two, but it is super close. So I can say this much. In the lineups from my sim, where Figueiredo was in the optimal, Valentina Shevchenko was in 48% of those. So just barely shy of 50-50. So the way the question is phrased, is it more likely than not? No. I think it is perfectly split. And the most likely scenario is you get one of the two.
Yeah, I think the 2 of the 2, right? You're taking, what are you taking? 18.6? Yeah. So like that's a ton of salary. So you only have so many combinations with that remaining salary. I think that one of the two, there are obviously more combinations and more possibilities. So for me, it's one of the two. And I think it's probably Shevchenko, because people think that's kind of an automatic checkbox and they're willing to take that underdog pick in Perez.
I guess I got to go to this question because I know it's a question that comes up a lot for you and Jason. Who's going to take down City?
Well, I don't see like so many people that kind of make my eyes light up from a takedown City approach. I think if anybody's going to take down City, Calvillo will be going to the takedowns. So Chukagian's going to be going for a ride, or a flight, getting her frequent flyer miles. I think Calvillo via takedowns, not too bad. But anything more than 3 takedowns in an MMA fight is quite crazy. I mean, 1 a round is a great thing because now you're talking about ground control, and you're really not the best grappler if you're allowing your opponents back to their feet.
I will say this again, and I will say this until it happens. You should only be allowed to get 1 takedown from a scoring perspective on DraftKings. 1 per round. You shouldn't be able to get a second or a third or a fourth. You shouldn't be able to stack those.
That would make things extremely interesting, and it definitely would, from a DFS aspect, make grapplers not so appealing.
Yeah, that's a change that I want to make. I don't want to lose because someone got 11 takedowns and landed 9 significant strikes. Can't do it. Bothers me too much.
Mm-hmm.
Why did the line move significantly on Buckley? I don't have an answer to that.
Somebody's feeling froggy. That's it. Somebody's feeling good.
Yeah, I mean, it could be either side of that. That it can just be like, information in the ether came in that Buckley had a rough weight cut, or that Jordan Wright didn't have a rough weight cut. It didn't move so much that it's close now. It's just not minus 250 anymore. It's minus 200. Either way, it's still 60 to 70% likely for someone like Joaquin Buckley. What else do we have coming in here? Josh wasn't on Elkins the other week. No, Josh was not. Josh did not want Elkins in that fight, and that didn't go well, unfortunately. No, it didn't. Let's see what else we've got from Premium Slack. I'm going to whiff on this name. Can you guys touch on Pulatnikov? That's actually easier to say.
Yeah, I mean, you did that pretty well. I will say Pulatnikov, he's a true 170 pounder. So Louis Kosey's talked about how he's not significantly undersized, but he is undersized for the division. He's a shorter statured guy, so he's going to be giving up some reach to Pulatnikov. Pulatnikov does come from a decent gym, known for having some great experience over in Hong Kong. Is only 5-2, and in his losses has suffered some KO, TKO losses. So you don't like seeing that when you're paired up against a prospect in Kosey. So Pulatnikov already, I won't say he's a defensive liability, but if you take Pulatnikov, you will be on the edge of your seat, hoping he doesn't get clipped, hurt, and rocked. That if you're siding with Pulatnikov, it's a leverage play. You're basically going against the ownership and trying to find a hidden gem. And he is coming from a good gym. I mean, he really is. You know, has good striking. Has seemed like he's been the distance in his fights. That's something that you can't say about Louis Kosey. So take that for what it's worth. I do have one lineup with Pulatnikov in case maybe Kosey's just round one hype.
I have a little bit more than that, actually. The 7% ownership, again, is one of those things where I'm just trying to come in a little bit north of that. Nothing, it's not like a huge stand or anything, but I do have some representation there. So I don't mind going there. MK in premium slack. Kosey, Perry, or Rodriguez for the MVP in a FanDuel GPP.
Yeah, I'll take Perry off of that for me because that fight's too tough to say. I think it comes down to Kosey or Rodriguez. Yeah. So do you think Kosey's being delivered a softball matchup here? And I think that he's just getting a nice feed where he can basically put away Pulatnikov and look like a legitimate contender in a 170-pound division? Or are you behind the stats and are you comfortable with rostering Rodriguez, who you've seen it, do it 3 times in the UFC, fighting a guy who's just knocked out? I'd probably be a little safer and say Rodriguez.
So Kosey pulled up in the MVP spot in my Sims 8.3% of the time. Rodriguez 8.2. I have a real difficult time picking between those two. If we're just talking in generalities, I would take the fighter that is going to get less ownership. So that would be Rodriguez in this case.
Nice. I mean, they're super close, right? I mean, we don't often talk about the high-priced fighters being, awesome plays. Like usually it's okay to be, get away from some of them. I do think that this week, DraftKings did a decent job with their pricing.
Friend of the program and fellow Awesemo compatriot Dave Lochran is in chat right now saying, man, that's a solid likes to viewers ratio. Pete must have the magic touch. You're killing me, Laffy. You're killing me. But don't worry. I'll carry your show again tomorrow.
Your shoulder's feeling heavy, Josh. Man.
I've been carrying the weight of the world forever. What's some likes? I can't. Nice to have you here, Laffy. Hit that like button if you haven't done it already.
Laffy doing some MMA DFS. I absolutely love it. Appreciate the support from all you guys in the chat. I mean, if we could get to 250 likes, that would be awesome. I mean, Josh and I sitting here taking your questions before the lock time. I mean, I'm going to keep looking, make sure we have no cancellations, Josh. But, fingers crossed. This is looking like a nice card with no cancellations.
If it happened right now, I would be unhappy.
We'd be scrambling like an NBA slate.
I'm not looking forward to that. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago that we had it like 5 minutes before lock? Was that 2 weeks ago?
I think it was like 3 or I don't remember, but it was bad.
My problem is, and I also don't remember because I had a few too many cocktails and just so happened to see it with like 5 minutes to spare. So I was able to make that swap, but I was not prepared to have a fight go away with, 5 minutes left. Didn't go well. My pivots didn't work.
If my memory, serves me correct, it was the Ian Heinisch, Brendan Allen fight, I believe 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. And then we saw Brendan Allen take a fight last week. So
yeah. Oh God. Okay. I saw a question that I wanted to get to. Jeff Campbell, favorite FanDuel fighter under $13 in a GPP. So that's Lipsky, Chukagian, Wright, Stoltzfus, Dalby, Pulatnikov, Maia.
Well, we're really dumpster diving here.
We are. Oof.
I would honestly say the salary and the odds of the Daukaus-Stoltzfus fight is a little too wide. I think that the salary should have been a little closer. So for that reason and that reason only, I would say Stoltzfus.
I think that my answer, and I didn't expect this to be the answer, is Ariana Lipsky, $12. The fact that she is like 40% to win this fight, everybody else is she's on a different tier from her likelihood of just being the winner. And that is massive for picking up a win bonus. So even though she is the slightly more expensive fighter, it's going to either be Lipski or I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that Jordan Wright picks up that W. That would be terrible for me financially, but
yeah,
it's Jordan Wright. It's a different site. FanDuel's different than DraftKings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that our audience is starting to notice that women's MMA targeting the lower salary fighter is not a bad play at all because it's so close usually. I mean, arm bars from guard, we talk about it every week. I mean, they're live. It can happen. And Shevchenko, Antonina Shevchenko is not her sister. She does make mistakes in the cage. She was out grappled by Chukagian. So, and I understand that's probably why Lipski's coming in as one of the most popular 7K plays. I just don't think her upside's all that big. But I get it though. I mean, under the $13 on FanDuel, definitely in play.
Yeah, that's a tricky price tier, man. Real tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. How many people in this chat are playing Taysom Hill at tight end on FanDuel? Hopefully most.
Yeah, talk about a free square.
Yeah, you don't normally get quarterbacks in the tight end spot. That's a fun spot. Which FanDuel underdog has the best chance to rack up takedowns defended in a loss?
I love it. I love the question. Okay. Well, I don't think that Shevchenko could always go to the takedown well.
Yeah.
I just don't see why she would put herself in danger like that against the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in Maia. Chukagian will definitely be having to defend takedowns. She's probably the one that I'm looking at as far as her stats getting boosted via takedowns defended. Outside of that, man, maybe Stoltzfus as well, because Dawkins and Stoltzfus both have an extensive ground game. Dawkins is a black belt, Stoltzfus is a brown belt, but basically a black belt. And, when either one of these guys get clipped or hurt, they resort to the takedowns. And Stoltzfus, in some videos I saw on social media, has been working a lot of sprawling and working a lot of that hen and arm position. So maybe Stoltzfus would be my second I'd go to.
Brian L. in Premium Slack says, YouTube should allow double thumbs up. I wish they did. I would prefer it. I would certainly. Ooh, Woody C. Fade of the night. Is there a fighter that you are fading pretty aggressively relative to, their personal popularity?
I will actually probably surprise a lot of people. I'm not fading, so to speak, but I'm underweight on Shevchenko based on her price. That's really not telling a lot of people much. But for me, it's kind of the one fighter that I'm okay with taking chances on the rest of the card.
Okay. This is not me advocating for this play. This is just simply how it worked out. I have no exposure to Daniel Rodriguez today. And so much of it is just because of the way that he's bookended. Figueiredo and Buckley being $100 and $200 cheaper than him with comparable ownership is just not the direction that I'm trying to go. It's easier for me to save $100 or save $200 in salary to get away in that spot. I do have more Louis Kosei. I do have more Shevchenko. So I'm going to go 8,900 and up, guys. Rodriguez is the one that I'm just going to cross my fingers and hope that I don't lose out on. If he goes for 135 DK points or something, I'll delete this video before you guys can go back and look at it.
No, I don't hate it at all. Dalby's probably not getting enough attention because of how he just lost in KO. And, he was dropped, hurt, and then submitted, basically was just completely out of it. And so a lot of people like to just kind of fade that fighter who's coming back off of a loss like that. I do think that Dalby's the best fighter that Rodriguez has faced. I think that, it's close next to Tim Means, but Tim Means isn't what he used to be. Dalby at one time had so much hype behind him, and he has fought Zaleski Dos Santos, Zach Cummings, Cowboy Oliveira. So I think that Dalby makes the fight interesting and makes it closer. If Dalby goes to the takedowns and he does have a great ground game, just needs to avoid the submission game of Rodriguez. But if you're on your back, you're losing an MMA fight most of the time. So if, say, Rodriguez only wins 2 of the 3 rounds, you could be looking at a lower score than him going out there dominating from bell to bell.
Then who knows what happens when you leave it in the hands of the judges. We got 2 more super chats. One from Tajik Bey. Do you factor in what the fight metric guy's ownership is when you build your lineups in GPP? Man, I wish I could know it in advance. Yeah, right. I need to be a mole. I need to start working for Fight Metric and bring the information back to you guys.
I would appreciate that a lot. So would my lineups.
Yeah, I would give anything for it. And then Hundo Savage, another super chat. So thank you very much. Sorry, meant to send this for Alex Baker's Bruce Buffer's "It's Time" impression from a couple episodes ago. Did you see that by any chance?
I did not, actually. And I definitely need to see that.
So it was either 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. Alex and I do a Friday lineup construction show for the NFL. And Alex led off that show with a pretty good Bruce Buffer "It's Time." And he committed to it pretty aggressively. It was good. It's probably slipping through the cracks. We'll make sure that it exists. We'll get that. I think it got pulled out and put into a tweet, but if it didn't, hey, social crew, grab Alex doing that and use that as a tweet moving forward for the rest of time.
I definitely need to see that. I mean, that sounds gold.
It came out. I wasn't ready for it either.
Yeah, it threw you off.
Okay, wild card in Premium Slack. Maia and Craig, or Gooden and Perez for a DK GPP?
Well, automatically, if you're rostering Maia, what is the rest of your lineup? I mean,
yeah. Hopefully, people that are favorites at that point, because you got a lot of money to go around.
I would imagine, right, Josh? Tell me if I'm wrong. That if you're rostering Maia, right, the likelihood of you having salary left on the table is probably slim. Because if you're rostering Maia, you want to spend up that salary and pick the top end fighters. I mean, that's an interesting thing. That's an interesting thing. I would love to hear what you have to say with that.
Yeah. So if you're using an optimizer and Maia ends up in your lineup, I think you'll naturally end up with a higher concentration of your entire salary being spent. If you are hand building a lineup with Jennifer Maia in it, then I think that you leave yourself an opportunity to leave some additional salary on the table as well, kind of get it with a double whammy. But in any sort of optimizer scenario, when you know that you have someone like Jennifer Maia at 6,600 in there, with her being so cheap, it is very naturally just going to build aggressively to use the rest of your salary, more so than any other lineup.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you a question. What are your thoughts on leaving salary on the table in MMA contests compared to other sports?
I don't pay attention to it because I know that it's naturally going to happen. I left less probably than normal. So I can tell you right now, in the 20 line, I've been playing significantly more cash as of late than I have been in GPPs, but in the 20 lineups that I do have going tonight, by the way, spoiler alert, since I'll let this go, secret content coming in like a month and a half or so for reasons why I'm only playing 20 GPP lineups, but you guys will see it eventually. I've got 5 spending the full 50, 5 spending 49.9, 3 leaving 200 on the table, and then it's 2 leaving 300, 1 leaving 400. I left 600, I left 700, and I have 1 leaving 900 on the table. I think anywhere in that, like probably anything under like 1,500 is probably fine. It depends on how many fights are on the card. When you start getting to some of those weird cards where we end up with 10 fights, you could end up having 48,000 if you're just trying to get yourself a unique lineup construction. When you have a card with 12, I probably wouldn't want to go too low, but MMA is different than some other sports where, generally speaking, you're going to get a winner and loser in 12 separate fights, and that those pieces can kind of fit together however they want. So it's sort of more just, did you get your 6 fighters right, or at least 5.5 fighters right? Sometimes you can get there in a loss. But on a 12 fight card, I'm probably not leaving much more than 1,000.
Yeah, so that's great to hear, because honestly, this week when I was making lineups, it was kind of opposite of how I usually am. I tend to leave a lot of salary on the table when I'm making my lineups generally for MMA slates. This week, I felt like I was, leaving probably 500 or less on most of my lineups. And I'm like, man, what's going on with me this week? And it comes down to the high options of how I end up liking a lot of the high options this week. And it's not always the case. So it's good to hear that.
Not to mention, I mean, Valentina Shevchenko is the most popular fighter on the slate on DraftKings. If you're going to Shevchenko, it's going to be really hard to also leave salary on the table with her $9,600 price tag. If you were leaving salary on the table before, she's just sort of scooping it up by being in the lineup.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Generally speaking, though, I don't have much of an aversion to leaving big chunks. The size of your contest is important. Like if this were an MMA milli maker and there were 200,000 entries, right, you're going to have to do a little bit more to be a little bit different, leave some salary on the table, do something to create a situation where you're not duped as much. If we're talking about a 1,000 person single entry, you don't have to think about leaving like $1,500 on the table to get different. You don't need to be that far away. You don't have to be that contrarian. So pay close attention to your contest size. That'll tell you a little bit more about how much money you should leave in the table.
And that's why I love this industry, is because I think that no matter who you are or whatnot, you can learn something from somebody. I've learned a lot from watching, Josh's videos on the Awesemo page. I've learned a lot from watching Alex. I've learned a lot from different people, and it's good to kind of bounce ideas off of each other's minds and see what, different people are thinking. And that's kind of what can hone you into taking down a GPP.
12 more minutes until lock. We have a full crowd. We've got 570 people. We're up north of 600. We got to your 250 mark. We're at 266 in likes. I'm good to stick around for 12 more minutes because we've got a ton of questions coming in.
Absolutely.
We could take this one straight to the bell, so to speak. Perfect. Pun intended, I guess. Dawkins and Lipsky, or Kosei and Rua on DraftKings. Oh my God, I just said Rua. I hate myself. It's different when you're reading it and you're removing it from your context. Hua, my apologies.
You hate yourself. I hate those options. I mean, No, I mean, Shogun Hua, I wish I didn't see the weigh-ins, because I didn't mind him as a 7K option until I saw how soft and kind of he didn't look the most motivated.
You know who he reminded me of?
You don't know what's going on behind closed doors, right? But, in that situation, I'd probably take the lineup without Hua.
I think that I agree with you in that one. I think that I would just rather have Lipsky, and not that makes me feel happy at all. Do you know what Shogun reminded me of at weigh-ins?
Who?
Verdum against Alexei Oleinik.
Yes, that's a perfect comparison. And I was actually off Verdum in that fight, and I liked his opponent. And, seeing Shogun on the scale makes me like Craig more. And I know it's not a matter of how somebody looks on the scale that can really determine the outcome of the fight. But being in the fight game, I look at Shogun saying he's either injured or not motivated. That's my personal take.
Yeah. I saw him. He looked a little soft, and then you saw Verdum come into that fight. He looked a little soft, didn't look great. Then comes back against Gus and very clearly either ran a little bit more or found a supplement in his food that helped. Whatever he did not look like the same human being. And I think that is where we sort of stand right now with Shogun. Just looked a little softer than you would want him to be.
In a rematch too. So like if you're not motivated for a rematch, maybe you're beaten mentally already.
Yeah, I mean, he's felt the power, he's felt the strength, he knows what he's getting himself into. That's always an interesting play if you're getting in there for the second time. Super chats are coming in fast and furious. Tajik Bey had one in a couple minutes ago that I don't want to miss. What are your hot takes? Do you have one? Is there anything super wild that you're looking at?
I don't really have like a hot take of thinking that Perez is going to get it done, because I do favor Figueiredo. I don't think Maia gets it done against Shevchenko. So I think those are the two hottest takes you can have on the card. I think my next pick would have to come down to maybe Joe Ban goes out there and puts on a welcome to the UFC type of performance and kind of reminds everybody how good and talented he is. I actually was a little worried at how much Joe Ban I had, despite my early love for Gooden. It just kind of, my salary left me with that. I'm like, you know what? I can see that being a perfect GPP fight, and I'm okay with getting to it.
I think I don't have like a hot take from a victory perspective. I'm hoping that my hot take is that like Nicholas Dalby somehow wins that fight because of my fade of Rodriguez right now. Again, I'm not the guy for a hot take. I just look at the numbers. If you ask me like 10 minutes into the card when I'm away from my spreadsheet and just like sitting and watching the fight, it's a completely different story. But once I start nerding out and getting into Excel, I lose my ability to have like fun human takes. It's just, I see the number and I can't do it. Ugh.
Love it.
We also got $5 in fake money. Cody Huffman giving us $5 Canadian. I don't know what that translates to. I don't know that money. It's fake. It looks like Monopoly money, but I appreciate the money nevertheless. No question coming in. Sam Schaefer, I'm assuming it is our final super chat. Sam Schaefer, no question, just a donation for all the awesome things you guys do for DFS at large. Sam, thank you. Should have asked a question, man. I'd been happy to answer it. If you can sneak one in there and I see it, I'd be happy to answer. But truly, thank you. We're happy to have you guys. It's a fun show. I'm very happy to try my best to fill Jason's shoes in this spot. I love MMA. I don't know nearly enough about it, even though I've been a fan for a very long time. From a technical aspect, I'm clueless. I'm too soft for that stuff. You're never going to see me rolling. I don't have, my ego can't handle being choked unconscious. Can't do it. Can't do it.
No, I mean, everybody's different. And I appreciate, your insight. I really do. It's cool to have your perspective on this because you bring in that data, and it definitely, and you also are very, knowledgeable in MMA, and you watch a lot. You can, I mean, you and I pre-show were talking about Clay Guida, Anthony Pettis, and you knew all about that fight as well. So it's like, you can be a casual fan, but still know a lot about a sport. And I do respect everybody's opinion on it.
I've been watching for a long time. I can picture to this day going out of my way to download Nick Diaz Takanori Gomi because I heard that Diaz beat Gomi, and I was just like, that just didn't happen. And I can picture where I'm at in my house at college, hooking up my computer to my TV so that I could play it. Oh, it's just incredible. And then Diaz opts for marijuana metabolites. Such nonsense. What a fight. What a war. Yeah. Oh, guys. If you guys only know Takanori Gomi from coming to the UFC, very different fighter in Japan.
Absolutely.
Good times. 5 minutes to go until lock. Maybe we should give everybody a couple minutes to get out of here. Get your lineups in. We appreciate you guys being there. Pete, any final thoughts before we get out of here and we go watch some UFC?
No, I mean, thanks for joining us, guys. I think we brought a different approach to it today. You definitely did, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I feel like I learned something. I threw Maia in a couple lineups, and I'm interested to see if she does last 5 rounds, if she is going to be a part of that optimal lineup. I'm just curious to see how this card plays out. And, again, thanks, guys. Make sure you hit that like button. We'll be back next week.
There you go. 274 likes. It'll be over 300 by the time this is all said and done. Guys, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it a ton. Jason will be back next Saturday taking over for me. And these guys will be back for the strategy show Wednesday.
Yeah, typically. Yeah.
Just trying to think about Thanksgiving. I didn't know if anything got moved around. Strategy show on Thursday or Wednesday. What's the card? I haven't even looked.
I don't know. It's a good question.
Blades Lewis.
Blades. You want to talk about Takedown City? It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Yeah. It's either an overwhelming amount of takedowns or Curtis Blades is asleep. Those are the only options.
Only options.
That fight's not going any other direction. Either Curtis Blades can take him down or Derek Lewis knocks him out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we see anything else. Rest of that fight card is oof.
Is it ugly?
Anthony Smith, Devin Clark. Yeah, that's going to be... Good luck on that one, guys. Have fun on that strategy show. Thank you, guys. Good luck tonight. Let's go, I guess, Jennifer Maia, because that's probably a financially lucrative thing for me. Let's go, Jennifer Maia. I'm ready to go watch some fights. You guys have 3 more minutes to get your lineups in. But for now, Pete and I are out of here. Good luck. And they'll talk to you again on Wednesday.